So if you're in Canada, I take it you're not going to be able to go to Tennessee in July, huh?
Yeah, well, that would be fun, but that might be difficult. Are you from that region, or is that where you're from?
I'm actually in Pittsburgh. I'm actually going to
Oh
be
yeah.
moving to. I'm going to be moving to Tennessee next year, though.
Oh nice.
So
Okay.
been scoping out the area and trying to lay down some pre-roots.
Yeah, yeah.
Pre-roots.
So,
I have
so why that location is well, maybe you'll touch on that today, but
I am going to touch on that today. And
yeah,
it's important. It's a good question. Like why there versus New York or versus,
yeah,
somewhere
yeah,
else. So,
yeah,
that's a good part of the conversation too about, if you decide to host something like, what does the location mean if it's not just something that you're planning to do in your local community, some
mm,
factors to think
yeah,
about, that sort of thing.
yeah. But
Um,
maybe there's a meaning to it, so that's totally fine. I was just asking if, and maybe yeah,
there
again, there could be a good
is, and
reason. Yeah, yeah,
there is a meaning, and I'm glad you asked. I'm going to be very excited to talk about that too. But then, of course, my little rabbit hole brain. I'm like, okay, let me learn everything I can about Nashville, and I'm like, oh, there's some crazy stuff that goes that from the history of Nashville. So, um, that was, part of my little journey. Oh, there's always crazy stuff somewhere. Um, so it's 3 o'clock. I'm going to give everybody just a minute or two to come on in. I think we're gonna maybe have a few more. If not, that's okay. Um, Archie, are you able to record this one?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I have it set up. Hopefully, it
Okay.
works better this time. It
Oh,
hasn't
it's
failed before, so let's see what's going
it's all
on.
good. Yeah, no, I'm sure it's fine.
All right.
I need to get GTO to narrate that one slide again so we can post that.
Mhm.
But that's actually probably good. Get that succinctly anyway into like a sound
Yeah,
bite. Um, Always opportunity and chaos, right?
yeah, that's true. Always plenty of chaos, it seems like.
Always, probably always. Um, but now I know that Johnny Law is going to be going. I know you can't go, Archie, to
Yeah,
Tennessee. Um,
sounds like it's gonna be a blast, though.
it is. I think we have. I need to double check, but last I checked, we had about 23 confirmed.
Nice.
So, and we've got people coming all the way from Alabama, Chicago. So that's kind of fun. Oklahoma. Um, so Nashville is cheap to fly into, which back to Sly's question, why Nashville? One of the
Mm.
factors that we thought about. Um, Johnny, Mark, what day are you coming in? Do you know? Have you made your plans yet? Oh, he might be on another call, just popping in. Well, we can go ahead and get started. Today is going to be like a very non-technical, very much discussion-oriented session. In fact, I thought about doing slides. I started putting together PowerPoint and I was like, you know, there are some topics that like kind of requires that. And then I think some are more discussion based. So what I've decided to do is Patrick and I, kind of put together just like a, just a like 1.5 pager of information about what we're going to talk about today. And once we finish our discussion, I'm going to add in anything that we get out of this that maybe I overlooked or didn't think about in that, and get it branded and put out as a one pager to share within the community. So, if people want to host meetups or they go to a meetup, what to expect, kind of things like that. Um, so today's going to be a little bit of a departure from the way we've done it before, where I'm not going to present like this full on PowerPoint presentation. It's going to be really, discussion based, and I really want feedback and questions, and feel free to share your ideas about what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to first start by, let me pull up my slide. I'm going to first start by just kind of talking about our goals today. So we're going to talk about, why is hosting a meetup important? I think people talk about that a lot, but they don't. It's just like a general, oh, let's all just get together and blah blah blah. Learning some steps on how to set up a meetup, what to expect, things like that. So we're going to discuss that. And then there's also challenges, like when you decide to do this, commit to this, what are some of the challenges you have to think about? Because it all looks great on paper, but maybe there's something that you didn't think about that could be an issue. And then last, we're going to just discuss the resources that you have available if this is something that you want to participate in or host. And I want to give you a little background on me. Most of you know me. I think everybody pretty much here knows me. But when I first started learning about blockchain, Bitcoin, and all that kind of stuff, I was trying to, this was back in 2016. I was trying to find information, and it was just really hard. It was hard to find good information. So much of it was really information based around price speculation or psychics, or there wasn't a lot of good solid information. And as a math teacher, and I was teaching at the college and the university at the time, I was concerned. I was concerned because my students didn't know anything about this technology, and that was, they were going into engineering, computer science, things like that. And I was trying to first learn kind of so I could expose it to my students in an academic way. Not that I'm some expert, but just be like, hey, this is on your radar. This should be on your radar. Maybe look for some quality resources to learn about it. And the more I was trying to learn, like, teach myself and talk with friends, started getting like just a few people that were also curious, whether it was colleagues or former students or current students. And so started doing like this Saturday study group at my house. And we would pick a topic, we would pick a project, we would try to, do our homework that week and come back for the next week and just kind of discuss what we learned, right? It was very casual. One of my former students was in that, and she had met with somebody who said, you should look at doing like a formal meetup. It hadn't really occurred to me. It wasn't like my path to do that. And so, but it was getting a little big. Like every week it felt like a new person would show up, and, my Saturday little like 5 or 6 group thing turned into people who came to my house that were maybe a degree or two of separation away from me, and I didn't know them, and I wasn't comfortable with that. So I was kind of in this, what am I going to do stage. So my former student met somebody who had worked at a local incubator in Wilmington, North Carolina, where I was living there. And he said, I think we can get you space like for a monthly meeting in the incubator. It was really, blockchain was like a hot topic. It was starting to become a hot topic then. And so we got sponsored for a year in that space. And it was over a year, maybe 2. And so we started kind of building a physical community that would come to, and it was very professional, it was very secure. It was right around the time, shortly after I started this, that I learned about DigiByte, and Josiah was one of the first people that we had come in and speak to our meetup. And so that was kind of my first introduction to DigiByte. But we had the technology there to pipe him in, and we had the lead architect of Hashgraph also pipe in, so we were able to get different speakers from different projects just to get people, a chance to ask questions directly to the source, right? And start educating themselves. So I've run meetups both in North Carolina for a couple of years, and in Pittsburgh I ran a meetup for a year. I don't do it anymore. I'll discuss a little bit about that. But so I do have a history over the last few years, or over about a course of 3 years, of running like a monthly meetup. And it became really apparent to me when I was talking to my students, and there's just not a lot of information out there for people that wasn't, about price speculation and hype, but actually like this technology is being implemented, and so few of us even understand it, and understand the implications of it. So that was just to give you a little bit of background of my goal on that in particular. So does anybody have any questions for me on that before I get started into kind of our discussion in particular today? Okay. So let me pull up my notes. Patrick, I sent you my, oh, there we are. It's like, I was going to have to ask Patrick to pull it.
Okay. Are you good?
Yeah, I got it. I found it.
All right.
Okay. So, the first question we ask is, why to start a meetup? I shared with you a little bit about, my path into why I thought this was important. But I'd like to hear everybody else's thoughts about, why do you think having meetups is important, in your physical community, or even if it's something that you don't do on a regular basis, just in general to support them? And what are your thoughts on that, especially with, keep in mind the framework of the time now, right? So I want to get some feedback from everybody else. Like, what do you think? Or some goals, like why do it?
I mean, there's,
It's very
I'd
Go
say
ahead.
there's a myriad of reasons. I guess, center of which is communication and being able to truly interact with people is the easiest way to get to know them. We have this sort of perception of who we think others are based on how we've interacted in the past, and I think ultimately that's probably just a small piece of the puzzle. And having an opportunity to actually be in the room with individuals and have real conversations gives a more kind of complete picture of the individual. And for that, it's makes it easier to communicate and to trust moving forward, I believe.
I would 100% agree with that. I think there's a huge difference between talking with somebody online, and even if you talk with them either through Zoom or audio, and meeting with them in person. When you go back to your online experience with those people you've met in person, it's a different experience than it was before. I've noticed that for myself. I'm sure other people have noticed that. And I think one of the words that you use that I think is really important is trust. It's very, very hard to build trust, especially now. And when you can sit down with somebody and look in their eyes and, have a cup of coffee with them and really, connect with them, even on, not to get too woo-woo, but like on an energetic level. You do get to know them on a different it's easier to lie to somebody through a keyboard than it is across a cup of coffee or a beer, And I'm not saying like everybody's liars, but it's we've all been here for a while and we know the difficulty with that. And so I think, that's another thing is building that trust. Um, and I want to add too, as far as like, what would be the purpose of having something like this? Like, even if you hosted something regularly in your physical communities, is things are changing really quickly around us. You've got the bricks, you got our monetary system, really having major cracks in it. Everybody has a theory of what's going on. You've got, crypto growing and shrinking and noise and screaming. And it's when you have a physical community of people who are learners. And that's what, at the core for me, my goal when I host a meetup is it's a learning group. It's a study group, right? So when you have those kind of people in your physical community that have a safe space to study in, to ask questions and to be inquisitive and to even disagree, but in a way that keeps that learning progressing and not, stall it into an argument. All of that to build up your physical community of people who probably are asking similar questions to you, right? And so I think a lot of us go through, periods where we feel very isolated because we feel like there's nobody around me that thinks about the world the way I do. And it's really easy to feel that way. So to build up some physical community and have neighbors of not just geographic area, but of ideas, we have neighborhoods of ideas that we need to like connect with those neighbors to really, I think, discern what's happening right now. It's kind of like for me, that was piggybacking off of you, Mark, like it's that trust factor, building a community, a physical community in your geographic location that you can trust, that can trust you.
Yeah. And I think that's so much more, authentic as well,
Yes.
and needed in not just this particular space where we find ourselves in, but just in general from a community perspective, being able to, I guess, sort of turn back the clock a bit and go back to what local communities used to do, which was have local governance and talk through issues and not rely upon the mayor and the chamber of commerce alone. Do those things that used to be sort of a community discussion in terms of where we're going. And so like there's just such a need to have genuine conversation, an honest conversation about things that are going on and what we can do about them here at our level, right? And then how does that impact bigger like sort of bigger narratives. So I think just the idea of people coming together and having like specific intention in mind in terms of what we're going to discuss, and to your point, really participating as learners as well, and focusing on that consistent sort of learning and iteration so that we together can sort of move mountains, if you will. I think it's just it's missing in society at the moment. I think everything is very top down, and it's got to change. It's got to go back to that sort of grassroots, sort of bottom up. And I think that's why I identify and love DigiByte community, because it is still that.
Yeah, I think grassroots decentralized learning is another. If like we had to like do it as a soundbite of why a meetup, and I think that's a good way to describe it. Anybody else want to add anything to that topic of just why should we do it? Like why is that important?
I'd like to add something.
Go ahead.
And this is me kind of putting things together from like the Johnny's video interview with the guys over there with Zcash, with Decred, and with Litecoin. And some of the points there were about building community, and so I think that different appeals, you can get people to get closer to a community if they see certain events, like these people are gathering up. Like I kind of know what DigiByte is. I think I've heard about it or whatever, but I want to know what it is. And through different events where you get people to come in and just share ideas and talk and bond or whatever, you can pull them in closer. But I think that leads to what I think Johnny said, and what Laura said about. Then you can kind of segue into like the deeper meaning of the gathering. Be able to teach. Okay, this is what these are the challenges that we're facing right now, and this is how we think that this will. This is the way we want to deal with it, or this is an alternative option to what's happening now. So I, just to me, it's community building. You bring in new people or people that have been around, just kind of like you bring them in closer and just grow people's understanding. And that's what I think when I think of like gatherings, and it just it builds those bonds. It just it adds to the community.
Yeah, I think that's like if you think about it, like Stone Soup, Stone Soup is just all of us on Twitter and Discord and blah blah, blah kind of adding flavor. I think when you get a physical gathering, it's meaningful. That brings in the salt and the pepper and the spices, and you know what I mean. It just deepens that if you had to have a visual.
Yeah, and I think I haven't
back
been
in-
to. Oh. Well, I just wanted to say real quick, I haven't been to any of the DigiByte physical meetups, Laura, but I know you've done a lot of them, and there's other people that have organized them too. And I think that really strengthened the community back in the day, and is a big reason why the DigiByte is still going strong to a degree. And I think that is important moving forward too. So.
Patrick?
No, I was just going to say, back in my previous life of digital identity and KYC, we used to talk about, or we coined this term called globalization, right? And even though we were building this network and had this, the power of a global network, when we were able to rally behind, a use case or a specific, in our case, a country, right, or a specific, bringing it back home a little bit, right? It was kind of like you could, bring the power of the global economy to your local vicinity or your local, right? So you kind of could use the strength of the network for where you actually live, work, and play, right? So that's something that is very important to me, and that's what we used to call it. Was when you were doing stuff like this, is like, yeah, thinking about it in terms of globalization, if that was a term, but it reminded me.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's
previous
awesome.
term from way back.
I think Mark likes it a little too. And that's really, when you think about it, we are trying to, a lot of this is everything's language, right? So trying to create a language that properly describes what it is we're trying to accomplish. And I love when, something like that, it's like unique, it's succinct, and it really nails it. I'm going to have to add that to the flyer. Definitely going to have to add that to the, can I use it? Is it patented?
Oh, sure.
Anybody else want to add anything? Right. Now let's talk about some of the constraints. I think a lot of people, and I was the same way, because, I kind of, like I told you my story, I kind of like happened into hosting meetups. It wasn't like, I went straight into it, just kind of progressed, right? So it evolved into, something more serious, sponsored meetup that met on a regular basis. And, at our max, we had about, say our biggest one we had was like 60 to 70 people, in our local meetups. So especially they could get kind of big at times. But, some of the constraints that people think about when we're all so busy is, is this going to take a lot of time? Like, do I really want to commit myself to something else? And when it comes to that, I'm telling my story is to show you that, my time commitment progressed as I went. At first it was just like, everybody bring a covered dish and, let's talk about what we learned this week. And I just had to make sure my house was clean. So it was just, but that was a weekly study group like that. That was different and was small and intimate with people I knew. But really, if you decide to host one of these events or host an event, it can be whatever you want it to be. And that's kind of the cool thing, is that, you don't have to start off with something big. You can start off with something small. You can start off with something that's like a low time commitment, that's like maybe an hour a month, put together a flyer, sign up a meetup account, and, maybe hit a couple things on social media. Or Jose, you're using, what is it you're using, next door? Is that what you're using to talk to your community right now?
Yeah, that's right. The Nextdoor app.
Yeah. So so you can get, if you're already connected to your physical community, or if you want to, something in a flyer, in a like local flyer, or let the newspaper know that you're going to be hosting a meetup, an education meetup, whatever. It can be as little as an hour a month of time that you commit to doing that. Or if you want it to be, if you want it to be something more, if you want it to be a weekly thing, if you want it to be, multi-hour event, and you can, that scale is dependent on you, resources, your help, your time commitment, that sort of thing. So I think a lot of people think hosting a meetup is, a lot of work. It can be a lot of work, but it doesn't have to be. It actually is whatever you choose it to be. So it's nice thing about doing something on your own is no one's your boss to tell you it has to be this or it has to be that. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. As far as the time commitment, I know that's a very precious thing for everybody nowadays. Does anybody have anything they want to add to that point about the time aspect, effort aspect? So yeah, you can kind of make it what you want it to be. The next thing, everything's time and money, right? Time is money. So then, the next question is it expensive to host a meetup? It goes back to that same thing. It's what you choose it to be. I actually never paid out of pocket for anything with the meetups I hosted. And the reason was, when we got sponsored by an incubator, a tech incubator, they had all these office spaces. And they had, beer on tap, which was free. They provided food for us once a month. And what they were getting out of this was they were getting people coming into this beautiful workspace. It was state of the art in technology. And, these were people who were already interested in technology, a lot of them self-starter, entrepreneur type mindsets. It was a way for that incubator space to advertise. So just by hosting us once a month, and like I said, it was a beautiful space. It was a great area of town. They end up getting several people sign up as monthly rental spaces there, because as they walked around and they saw the facilities, they're like, "Oh, this is really cool. Can I rent here?" And so depending on what you end up doing, it shouldn't cost you anything. It really shouldn't, depending on what you want to do. We were lucky to get that sponsorship, but even if it's if you just keep it small, if you're only meeting for an hour, you don't have to provide food and snacks. You don't have to have all that stuff. I mean, even if it's just reserving a picnic area at a nice park in your town and say, let's everybody just start here. Let's gather here and have a discussion. So it doesn't have to be this fancy incubator. It could be anything. I would, and we'll talk about this in the challenges, I would suggest not having it at your home. I think for obvious reasons. I was very naive when I started, and I was like, sure, everybody just come and learn. And then I was like, I don't know that person, and I don't know that person. And I started getting really uncomfortable with that. So that's when I stopped the at my home thing. So definitely something in the public space. Bars usually are free. A lot of people have meetups at bars. I'm not a big fan of bar meetups. I'll talk about that later in the challenges, but it's just, again, there's a lot of free space out there. And like Patrick said, if you're ready, if you want to commit some funds, you can even have like you can rent a space for once a month or however you choose to do it. So it really can be free, if not free, super cheap. But you can also look for people who would want to sponsor like local tech incubators or tech companies. This is just a community service for them. It's just a write-off. So I would, if you want to look for sponsors, people like that are good places to kind of check out. If you want to provide something a little bit nicer, and you don't have to pay out of pocket. So, anybody have anything they want to add to just cost? How to manage cost of events? Okay. I will say this too, when I was on the awareness team, we had people reaching out and they're like, can you sponsor our meetup? And they were like, I was like, well, we have to vote on everything that's spent. Like, what are you looking for your budget? And, they were saying like $1,000. It's a red flag to me. If your meetup costs $1,000, you're doing something really wrong, So, so again, like, I know, Jose, you're on the awareness team, right? I think you're muted.
Yes. Sorry, I got my mouth full of food.
Oh, that's okay. Sorry, I put you on the spot. but yeah, we gotta, like, if somebody approaches you and says, "Oh, we use Spencer," but if it's really expensive, it's, again, just a bit of a red flag, something to think about with cost. You can start small. You can start small with your time. You can start small with the cost. You can, and just let it grow. Um, so time and cost, those are our biggest constraints, right? Um, Now, let's talk about just, let's say you committed. I'm going to do this. What are some steps that I can take to actually, to make a successful meetup? And it starts with a team, right? Even if you don't have anybody but yourself. I was kind of lucky when I had my meetups. I already had friends of mine that were coming to my house, and they ended up being the founding team of our meetup. And our meetup became very formal. Like, we had a Slack channel, and um, we presented at forums and that sort of thing. And all of that was through having members of the team that were all in different networks in the city. And so each team member kind of brought their expertise and also plugged us into different networks. So it grew to be something really formal. But if you're just starting out and you're like, there's nobody but me, and you can always just start by saying, okay, I'm going to pick a date, a time, and a place, and I'm going to let my community know I'm going to be there, and I want to talk about blockchain, or I want to talk about DigiByte. Mine was, again, very general. I did host a couple of meetups that the topic was DigiByte, but they weren't just DigiByte meetups. It was a array of topics. And so, start out with just letting people know that you're going to be at a certain place at a certain time, and this is the topic you want to talk about, and see who shows up. And you might be surprised, because those initial people that show up and they're really interested in the same thing, and they have their own experience, and they have something to bring. Those are the people that you want to connect with, and that becomes your founding team. Because it's very difficult to run a meetup very regular, especially if it's like every month or even every week, or even if it's every 2 months. Just doing something on a regular basis is sometimes difficult. Like, Patrick and I do these every month, and it's not always like, super easy. And if one of us has to be gone, then the other one can pick it up. That's why it's really important to not have to do anything yourself. Like, you always have a team, so it's not all on your shoulders. And it gives you a diverse skill set that you're tapping. So, even if you're starting out just by yourself, like Sly, you're in Canada, and I don't know if you have any local meetups around you, but if you want to start one and you're like, I don't know anybody who's interested in blockchain. And when I moved to Pittsburgh and I met the girl that I had started a meetup with here, she was from Pittsburgh. And I said, you guys don't have any meetups here. Like, maybe we should start one. She was like, we don't really have very many people interested in that in this town. And the first one we hosted, there was 45 people that showed up. So you never know until you kind of put it out there and see. There might be more around you that are interested in the same topics that you are. And if you can keep those topics as fairly broad, like I wouldn't even start with, like, this is going to be a meetup. Like, I want to learn about blockchain. I want to learn about, the role cryptocurrencies are playing right now. Like, I want to learn about, even if it's like, let's talk about the laws that are being passed right now. Or con, like, show up and let's have a discussion. Whatever you want, but that's a good starting point if you don't already have a physical team close by. Does that make sense? Anybody want to add anything to that? Jose, I know you said you're in Southern California, which isn't too far from Mike.
Yeah,
Albie.
I'm about, well, I'm assuming that he's like in LA, Orange County area, but
Yeah.
I live towards the east of California, almost on the border with Arizona.
Oh,
But
okay.
no, I think that if there were ever events held down that way, that I'd try to make them. Cool.
Right. And I'm hoping that we, with the event in Tennessee, this will be the first, like, major DigiByte only event. Like, we've hosted tables and booths at other events, but this will be the first one of this type, I think, that's happened in the United States. So I'm hoping that from this first event, more will come out of it. My is my hope. So yeah, as far as starting there, start with your team. It's really that's you wanna have support because you'll burn yourself out if you try to do it alone. Um, and again, keep it as simple as possible. Let it build organically over time. Not try to force relationships, but just keep it casual. In that first, even if you don't know anybody specifically, in that first meetup, like when you like put it out there and say, okay, I'm going to meet this place this time, people show up, and you start networking with those people and ask them like, do you want to help me build this into something that's more regular and build something more meaningful for our physical community. Um, so use those first people. Give them an opportunity to help you is the way I would say it. The next thing, let's talk about like a venue. So I touched on this a little bit. There's a lot of choices as far as venues. Free choices. There's paid choices, of course, too. Depending on what your goal is. If the first meeting is just to get like-minded people together trying to answer the same questions, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't even have to have a place that has technology. It could just be just a low key casual networking event. If you are trying to do something more formal, like a presentation, or you have specific objectives that you want to go through and communicate, I highly suggest you find a venue that allows you to either have a screen or a projector or that sort of thing. There was a bar. Like I said, I'm not normally not a big fan of hosting these at bars, but there was a bar in Wilmington that in between our sponsorships, so we didn't always stay at the tech company. We stayed there for, like I said, maybe a year or two, and then and we try to also mix up the spaces some because people didn't want to drive on that side of town. There was a bar that had like stage and a drop down projector that we would basically, it's a slow time for the bar, so we blocked off an hour and a half for just our group, picked a slow time in like an early evening in the middle of the week, and it brought them customers. People would have a drink and watch. It wasn't like a big drunk fest, but they actually had a drop down projector, which made it so if people wanted to do a presentation, they could. That worked pretty well. But in general, I would say bars are something to kind of stay away from. If the purpose is education, learning, it gets a little noisy, gets a little off task. People can get a little weird if they get drunk. So I always try to limit alcohol as much as possible in these events. When I had the one in Pittsburgh, we were sponsored by a tech company, and we would have an after party, but the one in the actual meeting didn't have any alcohol at all. You have like snacks and lemonade or whatever, but it was pretty much like church social kind of food if you want to think about it like that. So having access to technology, I think, is a must. If it's your regular meeting versus the first couple just networking events. Another thing that people don't think about is your local library or your local schools and colleges. I worked at a community college and a university, and they have spaces that's available, especially if they're publicly funded institutions, that you can submit applications for events. And we held a forum at the college that I worked at, and we had the auditorium, and we had a lot of people show up for that forum. We also did it at the university, and all of that's free. That was free space with all the technology and all the IT support there. So you can get creative as far as your where you go. There's like a range of things, but again, like really, I would say absolutely the hardcore no. Do not have it at your house. So Anybody want to add about that on spaces? One of our constraints. Great. So picking a time, I found as we're doing with these education hours, right? Try to pick a time that you can be consistent with, that you can be regular with. I think that's kind of the key to community building. So people know what to expect. They can put it on, like with us, it's like second Sunday of every month at 3 p.m. Eastern. So people know that if this is something they're interested in, they can put it on their calendar and it's not like changing. And, the more you change things, the less people are going to count on you, the less they're going to come. So pick a time that works for as many people as possible, but also works for you. So it's something that is manageable for you. With all of this, it has to be manageable for you in order for it to sustain. And whether it's once a month or twice a month or once every 2 months, whatever. Once a month, I would say, for my experience, has been pretty successful, because there's plenty of time in between that month that people have a lot they're learning and exploring and wondering about, and so it gives people time to come with ideas and information. And it gives you time also, because if you're organizing it, are you going to be the speaker? Are you going to have a speaker? All of that kind of, what's your topic? What resources do you need? All of that requires, that planning and execution time. So giving yourself, at least a couple weeks to do that, again, keeps it so it's manageable for you and your team. But keeping it regular is a way I would describe good strategy, which makes sense, right? Because you're constantly having to check, when is it going to be? When is, like, I love pop-up Twitter spaces. I love that kind of stuff. But, and I think there's an organicness in that. And, but I also find it's hard. You can't count on it, so, being something people can count on, can put in their calendar, that I think is really important to success if you're going to host a meetup. Now, as far as setting up your meetup, I use meetup.com, and it's free. I mean, it's free. There's a free version and a paid version. But the nice thing about that is it's, the UI on it is really good. You can keep track of the members of your meetup. You can mass email them. You can, if something changes, we've had it before where, something changed, the door was locked on a venue and everyone's like, oh my God, where are we supposed to go? And we could just be like, and we just put it on our meetup site and send it to everybody who RSVP'd to go to that meetup, so far that I've seen, it's been my favorite platform. But I mean, there are all kinds of other platforms, and like Jose's using, he's exploring using Nextdoor as this like initial communication layer. So, but I mean, meetup.com really worked well for the ones that I ran. Easy to maintain, easy to communicate. It was easy for those members as well. And, again, there are fancier apps that you can do, but it's something they don't have to, sign up for and download an app. I think we're all inundated. So keeping whatever platform you choose to use, make sure it's something that's easy, that's kind of well used, and not some like niche little weird app nobody's ever going to check, so and with meetup.com, that's a third party service. So you're not holding people's information. You're not telling people to give you their email address that you're holding on your site, so, or if you have a website, you think about that too, about people who are coming and members. You don't want to be responsible for their information. So using a third party where they're working under their terms of service takes your liability out of the equation. Any questions on that? As far as platforms for organizing the event? Okay. And we used, for the one that we used in Nashville, we used Event Create, which it's a nice little sweet interface. And because this isn't a regular meetup, we decided to explore this option. And it just looked really professional, and it was allowed us to kind of present it as its own page. And I don't think you can do that with meetup.com. So that's why we chose that one. But like I said, there's lots of different options out there. And then after you, so let's say you started your meetup, you're running your meetup, everything's going great. Being able to keep in contact with your community that you're building in between, like let's say it's once a month, you want to, if it's a learning community, you want to be able to keep that information and ideas flowing. What we found really successful, especially in the Wilmington one, where we had a lot more resources, our team was bigger, community was bigger, was we had a Slack channel, and we would invite everybody to the Slack channel. It was an app most people had to use for work, and it was a way for us to organize, topics. People would discuss, what's going on in the world and in crypto and blockchain, locally, globally. We would have a channel for everything. So those communications keep happening in between our physical sessions, which I found really helpful. I think a lot of the people in the community found really helpful to, just kind of keep, again, it's building those relationships. Like this person's interested in this person's a miner, this person really understands wallets, finding those people who are interested in different areas and building those relationships. So like Slack worked really well for us, but Trello is also another one that other people use. Does anybody have any other ideas as far as like how do you keep connected in between your physical events? Again, next door or something like Jose is using.
Confluence.
Confluence. I hadn't heard of Confluence.
Oh, it's Atlas or Atlassian. The Jira, right? So it's just their wiki. It's very big and kind of if you were doing something like this for like a corporation, right?
Okay, that's a good point. So yeah, so things to think about. So how much time do you want to give? How much money are you going to need or want to give? How to build a team, venues. That's really, the venue is real important. And Sly asked me why Franklin, and we're going to get into that towards the end here. But the venue is really, it is an important, really important piece. Um, and then explore those other platforms, those resources that you can use to keep the entire experience as kind of seamless, streamlined, and cohesive and connected as possible as you're kind of, again, building this out if this is something you choose to do. And then, you've gotten all that. How do you choose your topics? And that's always, again, it's right up there with venue. What are those topics? So I always say, with the first one that you do, keep it very general as a networking. Maybe you can list some things that are discussion points that you want to highlight, but you can keep it less specific until you start growing a team, until you start growing a community, and help you with that. But picking those topics that are timely are really important. Like when we would do like we had our networking one, and then our first main topic that we did as a presentation was wallets, because it's such an important part of participating. And the learning curve is extremely steep, and it still is even 5 years later. So we were trying to pick topics that were the essentials, and then within that dive into like different projects and specific, just to be able to talk to the founders and the people who are at the high levels of those projects. And even still 5 years later, I think we're at a place still where if there's a specific project that you want to learn about, like I really wanted to learn about Hashgraph. I was trying to understand it. I didn't understand the algorithm, the consensus algorithm. And I was, very new to all of it. And I was just one of those that I couldn't get my mind around it. And we had just secured this, really nice high-tech meeting space that we could pipe in people from all over the world. So I started emailing people that I wanted my community to be able to talk to, like Andres Antonopoulos and different projects that I was interested, or different projects that the team was exploring that they thought was relevant. And this isn't about price speculation, but what was their use case? How was they built? How are they designed? How are they governed? These are the kind of questions that we really wanted to have good answers to. And we're still at a time where you can get directly to the source a lot of times, the source of the team. And so, like when it came to Hashgraph, I emailed them, and I was very tenacious. But I emailed them and I said, our community would really like to learn more about this. And it connected us with their lead architect. And he, came in from Canada, and piped in virtually from Canada, and was able to, answer questions that we had. And, my question was, why do you have 39, your consensus algorithm is 39 companies. Like, why did you pick the number 39? And he was like, well, it was bigger than one and less than 100. So, when you were able to talk with people like that directly, you get to ask different kinds of questions. And it's not, Twitter spaces are great, but you don't get, a lot of times you don't get to ask your own questions. I usually don't get a chance to ask questions, and I like to ask questions. So this is an opportunity for you, depending on your topic, to bring people in that are, again, highly connected into the project, that can give, firsthand information, quality information, and not just some, YouTuber who's reading a PR release trying to shill a coin. Like, there's just a different quality of education and information happening there. So you open up an opportunity for just like a different layer. So getting those topics picked, again, you don't have to do it all yourself, but let the community you build, we had a topic on mining, and I've been networking in one of the meetups, and there was like 3 guys that were mining. I was like, hey, do you guys want to get together and do a presentation on mining? So you don't have to go even outside of your community. You can really see what skills and interests people have within your community, and give them the opportunity to educate. So, any other comments that people want to make on, topics, picking topics, that sort of thing?
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna ask, how do you feel like crypto had this whole bull run? Now it's price is down or whatever, and there's all this regulation. Do you think that's going to impact like the ability to have meetups, and how's that going to change things? Do you feel?
I think that is a great question, and I'll say this, Archie, and I think you bring a really good point. When it's still about price speculation for 98% of the people, it is still about price speculation. When Bitcoin was rising, we would have an influx of people, and everybody wanted to learn about this, and a lot of it was people tried to bring the conversation about investing, and we had to really squash that. Be like, that's not what this is about. This is about learning. It's about learning the protocols, about just trying to educate yourself on macro view, but this is not about investing. This is not an investing club. And we had and I'll talk about a little bit, some of the challenges, but that was definitely one of the challenges when price was down. Yeah,
I think that was part of what we've experienced with high schools and colleges, right?
Yes.
What we've had to be very, very careful of when we're talking about blockchain curriculum or stuff like that. Is like that is kind of their hesitation, right? Because you can't talk about money. So
Yeah.
just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and that's and it's a good point. Also, that can get out of hand real fast too if you're like opening a space up to the general public. And depending on the space that you're, hosting at, there might be restrictions on that. So just that's definitely something to think about. But the attendance is 100% correlated to price. 100%. And I was in a group with other meetup leaders, and there was a guy in Atlanta, and the Bitcoin Atlanta BAC. I forget what the C stands for, but it's one of the longest meetups. They've been hosting for multiple years, and they have a lot of support and funding and stuff like that behind them. I asked him, this was when I first started really taking it seriously and doing this on a more serious level. And I was talking to him, and I said, well, what's your average? Like, how many? I said, what's your membership? And he said, we have 8,000 members. And I was like, wow, you have 8,000 members? I was like, what, and they do once a month. I drove down there one time, and I went to one of them, and it was cool. They had a really cool space. But what's your regular monthly attendance? And he said it can fluctuate between 40 to 1,000 depending on the price of Bitcoin. So does that answer your question, Archie? Like, it will 100% affect how interested people are in what you're trying to talk about?
Yeah, that's illuminating, and I think it's pretty similar to what we see online as well. So
Yes,
I guess that really tracks.
Yeah. So it's all very correlated. What you expect. But to me, I feel like trying to start something like this while the price is down is actually a better time to start it, because that's when you get, and we see it within our own, like you said, our online communities. You get the people who are there for a very different reason, than price speculation. I know that 98% of this, 95, 98, whatever, of this industry and people that you talk to, they might say, oh, I'm in it for the decentralization, I'm in it for the use case, and time tells. So when you build your communities at a time like this, those are people that usually really are. And Archie, you and I have had this discussion after being on the awareness team together. It's like, who are the, if you think we're kind of in essentially a bit of a war, right? In a lot of different realms, not to be hyperbolic, but we're all trying to learn this. The currencies are changing around us right now and very destabilizing. And like, who is it that you want in that foxhole with you? Someone who's going to bolt the minute, they're like, oh, I got what I wanted and I'm going to get out. Or people who actually try to build systems with you that, can be autonomous and independent, So just because the number is higher doesn't mean the quality of the attendee is higher. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's something to think about, I'm not saying numbers are bad. I'm just saying, like, there is a quantity versus quality equation in that, for sure. For sure. And it's a good question. Really good question. And it can fluctuate quite a bit. So now let's get into the lessons learned. I've learned a lot. I've told you I learned not to have it at my house. I mean, nothing bad happened, but I think, it's just a safety thing. I was very naive, keep the venue public. One of the biggest lessons that I learned was when you start out, and especially in crypto, there's a lot of people in here seem to be veterans. There's a dime a dozen startups or whatever that will look at meetups, especially if you're a successful meetup, and they'll want to tap into you as a way of marketing, which is natural. Like I said, when we got sponsored by that tech company, why would they do it? You always ask, why would someone sponsor it? It was so they could market their space and rent more spaces, and they did, and it worked. It was a good, it was a good situation for them, right? Um, when you have companies that reach out to you and they say, "Oh, I want to sponsor your meetup," that to me is one of the things you want to be most careful about, because when you take sponsorship on behalf of a company, you're exposing your physical community to that company. You're legitimizing that company and saying, they're sponsoring me, so they must not be criminals, right? They must care about our physical community the way I care about my physical community. And as we're seeing on the daily, people that were once trusted are now questioned, or now have, you can see like, oh well, this person was just mania. I would just say very, very careful about taking any kind of sponsorship from a company. Again, unless it's something where they're actually, like they're like a meeting space, they're letting you, use a room in their meeting facility or something like that. But I would say as a meetup leader, be most careful about that, because if you are successful in your ability to grow a community, it's going to get the eyes of people who want to tap into that grassroots level of marketing and turn it into like almost an MLM level. And you just want to be real careful. What if they are like, we want to give you merchandise that you can give out. Again, remember, if you're taking sponsorship, you're taking merchandise to give away or whatever, you're validating whatever that company is. So, and you're putting your name towards it. So be very careful about that. And in my situation, and this is the reason I don't run a meetup in Pittsburgh anymore, was we had a really successful meetup for about a year, and a ATM company, CoinFlip, wanted to sponsor us. They've been around for 5 years. I thought, no biggie, blah, blah, blah. The very first month after their sponsorship, their CEO was our guest speaker. And there was a blockchain forensic analyst who had been investigating them and questioned the CEO, during, it was right after COVID. So it was all, or middle of COVID. So it was all online. It's all recorded, questioned him about their AML practices. And it was apparent they had none, or had none in the past. It was pretty jarring, and it really knocked the wind out of me in a lot of ways, because it was something I didn't expect. And then I realized, wow, I've been like promoting these people, and their whole goal was to put physical, and what it looked like, what was being presented, physical machines in our communities, in our physical communities, that had, at the very best, lacking AML practices, which means very easy to launder money through those machines. You know what I'm saying? So it was really like a real turning point in my life, to be honest with you. It's why I stopped running meetups. I was really, it took me a while. This is going to be my first meetup, hosting a first meetup since that happened, actually. And so this first one in July it'll be almost over 2 years since my last one. So I don't, when I say those are some of the warnings, I don't take that lightly. And I don't want to see that happen to anybody else. So that's really like one of the biggest things to really watch out for. One of my biggest lessons learned is any kind of sponsorship. You're validating somebody else. If it's a company, you have to really make sure that you're ready to put your name behind that company and do your own form of vetting. Like, after that question was asked, I started to vet the company, and I found out the chief compliance officer had been a pancake flipper. That was his prior work experience. It was one of the largest BTMs in the country. So I didn't do my own homework. I was mad. I was mad at myself for not investigating that. So if that's something you choose to take on, make sure that you're you're careful about that. Does anybody have any questions about that part?
Not a question, just wanted to add. I'm sitting here and I'm kind of listening to the whole conversation, and it's like you mentioned the Nextdoor app, and that I've tried previously, like to see, hey, what do you guys think about blockchain? And the responses I always get are skeptical, and which is fine. Which it has helped me identify things from their point of view, what the way they're looking at it. Um, if I could like start a group here, I would want it to be revolving around DigiID and DigiAssets. I've had this idea because I live out here next to the Joshua Tree National Park. And there's a lot of like studies that by the turn of the century that about 85% of the trees will probably die because of the temperature and climate. And for me, like I was like, well, man, how can I combine like a citizen science effort with the park. And to me, I kept thinking like, well, what if you like, I like growing plants. I like growing cactuses and succulents. And I was like, well, what if you started this project where you grew Joshua trees? Because that's the park out here is, it's named after Joshua trees. And say you kind of say I photographed every plant. I serialized it, just even just a number, but then I created a digi asset to track that. And if that plant ever went anywhere, that digi asset could go with it. But then I was thinking like on a bigger scale, we have it's a National Park Service, and to be able to get them to be a part of, or just to look at DigiByte as in like, okay, how do you what are you talking about? What would you do with this? How does this make our effort better? And anyways, that's the way I would love to create a group out here. And yeah, right now it's just kind of difficult. I'm not a coder, and I can try to figure out how to back end add the code for like DigiID, or teach people about DigiID and DigiAssets. But there's challenges there too, because like if you ever go into DigiAsset X, like the creators, they have their challenges with the platform itself. And hopefully soon there's more options. But those are some of the challenges, and just kind of like listening to the conversation and meetups and stuff like that. That if I were to create a group out here, I would want it to be about the technology, not so much the currency. But the last thing I'll say is that the last attempt here with when I shared that information on the neighborhood app, I included the link. And when one of the guys that responded went to the website, the first thing he saw was a buy button, and that was his comment. Like this seems like a fellow crypto whatever trying to sell cryptocurrency. There's a buy button right there. So there's challenges, and and we are here because we believe in the technology, and it means different things to different to some of us. The financial freedom, the technological aspects and stuff like that. But there are challenges, and I think that it's good to kind of identify those so we can try to improve on those things, and then be able to kind of approach the subject again and be like, okay, let's look at it again. Let's try again.
Right.
But
well, and I think you raise a good point too, because you're really, there is a very hard macro narrative that is enforced, and it's not like that's a self-inflicted wound to this industry. It's not being done to us. It's being done from, that call is coming from within the house, man. So trying to be, and I think that's a good perspective, in the challenges, like, and Patrick and I have definitely had this when talking with schools, like he said, like it has to be about the use case, and not so much like pushing. You got to be really careful with the language, and not pushing anybody about buying. We had a Twitter Spaces last week, and it was a very heated discussion about why people are discouraged about talking about price speculation in the DigiByte community, and there's two schools of thought there, and one was like, well, that's the reason people are interested in crypto, so why wouldn't you tap into that? And the other part of that conversation is, well, it's it's legally dangerous for you if you're an American to do that in a meaningful, in any big way. And again, if someone's coming in for price speculation and they're not coming in for a use case, they'll be gone. These numbers on the screen change, and if you're promising them something or you're giving them hope that this is that expectation, that it's a fleeting friendship, and they'll be gone the minute that rises. If they don't care about the use case, they don't care about the use case. So I think you make a really good point about keeping your topics use case focused is imperative and definitely part of the challenge. And it might mean that you have a smaller crowd, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing if it's about using it, testing it, and kicking the tires. Another thing that I would also maybe just suggest, Jose, is see if there's any blockchain clubs in your area and connect with them too, because a lot of times those are, they're supported by academic institutions, so they're not allowed to talk about price speculation. So, not guarantee that you're going to have a huge group or anything, but you might want to start with, reaching out to them if you've got a local college or university. And that might be a good starting point, because usually those are students that are caring about the actual technology. And like you said, you're not a developer. Those usually are more like kids who are doing coding and that sort of thing. So it might be a good avenue for you, because you're not a developer, but you are also, you're mature, you're a leader. You've got all these other qualities that those students could also benefit from. So just an idea for that.
I like it. We have a junior college that's not too far from here. If I looked out, my front door, I could probably see it. But yeah, and
tap into them, and or even even if there's not a club, if there's an instructor that's teaching anything with cybersecurity or anything, might be someone just to connect, just because it also gives you a little bit of cred, when you've got somebody from a local college that's participating with you as well.
Yeah. You know what, when I wrote my post on the Nextdoor app, and I'll keep it short, I think we're coming close, but I was targeting kind of like the technical audience, and I didn't get any response. I don't think I got any responses from any technical people, like asking, like, well, are they on GitHub, or where can I see this? Is it open source? Just those kind of questions. But you know what? Yeah, it just got to keep looking for the right people, and yeah, I think that even if yeah, I think implementing, because I've gone through like I've looked at the documentation for like DigiID, and I know there's plugins, but then there's the like where you can just compile your own code by lines, and if somebody they can turn that into a project, like
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I'll continue to focus in that area, and see if I can find somebody from there or from the base, because I live like 10 minutes away from military base, and this is the Marine Corps. This base hosts the Marine Corps School for Communication and Electronics, and there's a lot of data guys that work there. So just coming across the right person, and just kind of and from there building the team or the community, and kind of expanding from there.
Yeah, no, I think, it looks like you've got definitely some resources around you, and yeah, it's always it's a matter of just kind of starting small and seeing where you go. And you did it right by reaching out and being like, what's the general consensus I'm getting back with this? So it gives you, every challenge even gives you information. And I would say the last challenge, something to think about if you're hosting something, definitely have a code of conduct. And I think that's really important. I didn't have a code of conduct with my first, when we first started with the meetup, because I didn't think we needed it. And, you have people come and try to like sell a project or solicit, or, you want to get your team and your community to build a code of conduct. And also, let people know what the code of conduct for the venue is, right? So that's why, again, like having stuff not in bars, because it just reiterates what the code of conduct should be. It's not, it's not just a bar. It's always nice when it's in a tech space or academic space. People just know to be chill. And so with that, I know it's been a great discussion, but we're getting out there in time. I just want to highlight a little bit about I know you guys, I think Patrick might be able to come. He's still on but if anybody asks you about the Tennessee event, so why do we pick Tennessee? Sly is a really good question. Well, first of all, my sister lives in Tennessee. So I was talking to her. We haven't started fundraising yet, but we want to keep moving forward with, until we can start bringing in funds for the Alliance. So really wanted to do an event just to meet the community, just to we haven't had anything like this in the US. So I was looking at different spaces and it's really expensive. And so I was talking to my sister, and she lives in a really nice area of Tennessee called Franklin, right outside of Nashville. And she said, I think I can get a deal on a space in my building. So we end up getting, because I knew her, we end up getting this really nice space that has everything that we need. It's not a bar, community center, but it's in a great location. It's half hour from an airport, and the tickets are insanely cheap to fly to Nashville. Nashville's becoming quite the technology hub. We also have another Shane, another member of the community that you probably see him a lot. He's not far from Nashville. He's outside of Nashville. So we needed a place that was, inexpensive, that was, relevant in technology. And also we had people physically there to help us. So that was kind of like it became our perfect situation for this first one. And right after we announced, then the Bitcoin conference announced they're moving to Nashville. And the reason they're moving to Nashville is because the founder, who I think he is the head guy at Bitcoin Magazine, lives in Nashville. So I've been on LinkedIn. I'm looking through different people in Nashville who are in blockchain, and it is exploding. So Franklin's like the upper echelon of that. It's a very safe area. Nashville proper is actually quite dangerous. So we wanted a space that, again, geographically, you want to think about, like, you don't want to hold it in a place that's, people are going to get mugged or something like that. So and the nice thing about where our location is, and people have already started getting their hotels, is everything's walkable. So there's restaurants and bars and coffee shops and hotels, all of that, all within walking distance. So, if you're hosting something where you're expecting people from all over to come, it's not just a local event, you really want to keep all of that kind of in the back of your mind. Like, is it an expensive place to go to? Is it easy to get to? Is it safe? And people walk, and I have to rent a car and do all that kind of, So this was like, for us, for this time, it was that perfect venue. For it ticked all our boxes. And it's a real destination place. It's a fun place to bring people for the weekend, and we wanted to make it so that it's it's not going to be a big formal presentation. I think most of the board will be there. We're all flying in. We'll do a small thing about the Alliance, where we're at, what we want to do, just to really meet everybody. But it's just more of a gathering. Not a fundraising event. If people want to give, they can, but it's not like a necessity. So it was just more, we just wanted an event to give people a space, like, if you build it, they will come, to meet each other, to meet us, and help us grow going forward. So that's kind of why, what to expect in Nashville. But a lot of people are coming for the weekend, and there's a lot of fun stuff to do in the area. And we wanted a place that people could bring their family. They can bring their mom or their grandma or whatever, if they wanted to set the tone, the kind of quality of events that we would, host and participate in the future. our kickoff. Did that answer your question, Sly?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It seems like a nice location the way you're describing it. I just wanted to know if there was a reason why. Maybe
Yeah,
there's some more people in the area or something like that. But
it
I
was.
mean, it was
Yeah,
not like a negative way. It's just why that
no.
place
Yeah, it's
and then yeah, Nashville. That's true. I forgot about that. The Bitcoin's going to be there as well. So yeah, that might be a great location in the end.
yeah. We're a trendsetter, man. You know, they followed us because we said first. Yeah, there's definitely I
Exactly.
think a lot of good opportunity in the area, and again, I'm going to be moving to that area next year, so I also wanted to kind of test my feet in that because there's a lot of different people on the board with different kind of skill sets. GTO is a developer. John helps with infrastructure. Michelle is she's a lawyer and she goes to a lot of the blockchain events, and my skill set is in education and meetups, so kind of starting to build my home base there a little bit also is exciting for me to be able maybe go back to doing something on a regular basis like I used to. So but anyway, that's what I've got for today for the discussion, and really you guys gave me some good ideas. I'm gonna I'll get the one pager together, and it's something that you can share. If you have any other things that you think that I didn't touch on or you think about later, just message me. But we wanted to create something a little bit different than we have done previously. Is just a shareable, one or two page document of how to things to think about, and starting that discussion for people to maybe creating those spaces in their own physical communities. Anybody else have anything?
I just have one question about resources. Like, is there any maybe a link on the website or something like that you could get resources or like the basics of, I don't know, DigiByte, getting some logos, getting some flyers, whatever, that could be added to a meeting. Is there like a central point for that, or?
It's a good question, Sly. We do have it on GitHub. We have the logos and all of that, and I'll make sure I include those links on the one pager. So so for starting a meetup and running a meetup, that's a good idea. I'll make sure I include those GitHub links for the logo and that sort of thing.
Oh, that's great. Awesome.
Good suggestion. Good suggestion. Anybody else? All right. Well, it was been a lovely Sunday afternoon with everyone. Thank you all for taking the time. And if you can't come to Franklin, we will miss you, but we will share a lot of content and you will feel as if you were there. So we'll be active on social media even while we're there. I'm sure everybody will be. And hopefully it will be the first of many in the future. So like Jose said, we really want to try and hit every main area of the United States as far as geographic. So, West Coast is next, buddy boy. West Coast is next.
Nice.
All right.
Well, then Canada.
Then Canada. Yeah, we need some. Now, where in Canada are you, Sly? Did you say?
I'm in Quebec. I'm in Quebec, so I speak French as well. So I can cover both languages. So
that is good to know. Always good to know. Yeah. Careful telling me a skill set, because I'll put you to work.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, awesome. Yes, we definitely need to go to Canada. I watch a lot of Murdoch mysteries, so Toronto's on my list of things to go to.
Yeah. It's a great big city now. Yeah.
But anyway, and thanks again, Archie, for always showing up on these monthly calls and recording for us and hosting for us.
Hey, my pleasure.
All right, everybody. Well, have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and we'll see you on the flippity flop.
Likewise, and thank you all for hosting.
Take care, everyone. Yeah.
Thanks. It was awesome. Thanks.
Bye.